Social Engineering Toolkit has a really nice and easy to use Windows menu-based GUI, or not GUI, terminal. So I'll click on Social Engineering. You can do a lot of stuff with the Social Engineering Toolkit. Disclaimer, it is illegal to do this against people who don't have the explicit permission of. It has capabilities in spear phishing, websites, infectious media, sites like USB drives and CDs, spam, and other email attacks, Arduinos, text message spoofing, and even more. I specifically focused on the website attack vectors. Okay, and here there are 6 options. Well, 5, plus you can bundle several of them together. So the Java applet creates a basic Java app on the page that contains malicious code. It's one of the easiest to run, and it doesn't require a lot of trying different sites or adjusting the index.html or other background stuff. So you open web templates. And you just enter in your computer's IP address, where the computer, if the attack succeeds, will call back to you. It also has lovely pre-made vulnerabilities and options of what to spoof. Social Engineering Toolkit works closely with Metasploit for the payloads. So if you're using Social Engineering Toolkit, it should be on a computer with Metasploit installed. And then it takes a little while to run. In the meantime, if I go to the website, I see a decent spoof. So this one specifically has the plugins, which is one reason you should just be aware of them. If you have plugins enabled, you'll see the lovely "this computer wants to run Java." There is a reason that Java is disabled by default, and it's very, very, very hard to, or complicated, annoying, to enable it. So that's why you don't run Java on your computer. Okay. I'm going to clear out my var/www where the website files are stored, because one of the disadvantages of SCT is that it can store websites and kind of cache them. Not cache, but you have different tags, and sometimes it doesn't overwrite the index.html. So you want to be giving them GitHub, but they're still getting Google. For that same reason, I will just restart the toolkit, and then you go through. The next one I'm going to show you is the credential harvesting method, which basically they send you to their website, and there happens to be a form on that website, and when you enter data into that form, all that data is sent to their server. So if there is a username and password, you get the plain text username and password. Some websites are harder to clone using the social engineering toolkit's default clone method that's automated. I tried a lot of them, but the ones that are run with a lot of JavaScript or actually check to make sure that the site that is making the request is an existing site that's on their website, so they can't load all the files. Or some of them, I think, use things other than post requests, because you don't get anything in the ending file. Another disadvantage is that the default user agent of the social engineering toolkit is IE7 or 8. If you did some work, you could just get the more recent version of IE7 or 8. Got it? User entering the password, sign in. Problem. And then sitting in your computer, there is a lovely text file with their username, and no, that is not my real password to GitHub. We'll give my computer a minute to catch up. Any questions while we wait for this? The last one uses Metasploit attacks directly, specifically browser exploits. So you go through them. And they give you a lovely option list of what exploits you can use against your browser. If you notice, there's a lot of Internet Explorer, some Java, some more Java, some Adobe Flash, Cisco, some more Adobe, and a little bit of Firefox. The reason we don't use Internet Explorer. I did some research, and it turns out that Internet Explorer has a vulnerability on 6 through 11, so I'm going to choose number 24. In theory, you would know which browser you are running, and you can pick the best one. I'll choose one of those. And it takes a little while to load the Metasploit. So while it's loading, there are a couple things that you can do about social engineering. At the most basic level, just be suspicious. If you're in the cyber defense competition, Red Team is watching. They are there, and they have used social engineering in the past. In other stuff, any link, any download, even if they appear to be from a trusted friend, could have malicious, could send you to a malicious website, or have malicious code. So in general, it's best to go to the website through Google or your web browser instead of clicking a link or like just copy and paste it after making sure it's legit, so that you know that the link location is the same as the text that's printed on the screen or that's printed in your email. In other types of social engineering, I didn't start it. So, and this is the reason you also use antivirus. I am fortunate that my antivirus actually catches this, but a lot of people, not everyone has antivirus, which is not good. So, those are the 3 demonstrations I have of both what works and what doesn't work. More generally, in general, you should be the one initiating connections. You should find the websites. If someone calls you on the phone, you don't give out personal information. Instead, you look up their phone number and call them back. Just general safety practices like that can, in general, be effective against social engineering, unless they control your Wi-Fi hotspot, in which case you're already dead anyway. Are there any questions?
So here's a question for all of you guys. I'll wait for the next presenter to set up. How high can Microsoft count to?
1.
No, a little higher than that.
2.5 billion?
No, a lot less than that actually.
2037.
No, they can count to 8 because they decided to skip 9 and go straight to 10.
What?
So it came out today that Microsoft announced that their next generation operating system is so good that they're just going to dub it Windows 10. Who cares about Windows 9? No, it apparently never existed, it's just Windows 10.
Windows 8, Windows 8.
I hope it's Windows.
So they're making it with the same developer, so Windows 8?
Apparently it blows Windows 8 out of the water. There's a rumor that it's actually going to use spaces similar to Mac and what's been on Linux for how many decades?
20 years.
I've heard they're releasing 9 as a patch for 8, so it's like 8.2.
I mean, their official explanation was that Windows 9 was generally an internal thing that they used to help develop Windows 10, but really they just forgot to count.
So when is
I saw just Callie in my booth. I don't even care what this is.
I don't think there was a release date that I read.
Preview tomorrow, actually. The early preview.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, so while he's getting that set up, I suppose I can start talking.
Quick question, if anyone had do you have any issues? Are there any issues with this in HDMI normally?
You have to press the button a bunch to get it to work.
Oh, it's not anyway. Okay. Could you represent Hack IC or just a curiosity?
Okay. So at Hack ICU, we built an app that would essentially say that it's a popular geodating app on Android and iPhone and BlackBerry actually, saying that it was the app, and then it would spoof multiple GPS locations and then request distances to every other user using the app. We then use a process called trilateration and put all of those users onto a map for Iowa. So this is actually Ames.
But over a little bit of blogging, we got a lot of fun fact. If we do everything serially in 15 minutes, we can locate 18,000 people. This is something that we're not going to do again because we realize it's a terrible idea and we haven't been collecting data. This is more of just a proof of concept to show that they should be fixing security and you probably should be using the service if they handle security like this.
So, what our app can do is you can see where people are within like a couple feet. Say, like I was inside of Hoover and it showed me like right outside of Hoover.
Yeah, it's generally about within a block.
Fairly accurate.
A lot of this we didn't use the best mathematical methods, as well as sometimes the self-image GPS isn't as accurate.
Okay, so you can also click on different users and see where they've been in the past, since we updated like once every 15 minutes, I believe.
So, for example, you can see this person at many points, for example, at all of these, was around Buchanan. Due to the inaccuracy, we can learn a lot of information, such as where they live, where they go to class, all of this. Again, this isn't being released, and we've stopped data collection. I just want to stress that this is something that shouldn't be done, but it's more just to show that it can be done, and certain things that they should be doing soften, as well as how we're able to find these issues.
Okay, so the most part of our presentation is now going to be showing you guys how we did it.
Also, I don't think I actually ever named the service. The service is called Grindr.
Grindr is a gay, bisexual, and curious male geodating app for Android, BlackBerry, and iPhone.
So if you know anyone using it and they don't say, I don't know, want people to be able to track where they move every 15 minutes, you might want to tell them not to use it. Okay. First week.
Okay.
Okay, while we're getting this up, in the times that we're going to use it, we're going to be using Burp Suite. Realistically, if you use something else like Charles Proxy or like any web debugging proxy that can help install that work, I'm not sure if the licensing is on Burp Suite. I know Charles Proxy is pretty common in a lot of development environments, and so you can find it legitimately in a lot of cases.
Burp Suite uses its proxy and a lot of basic functions. Most of its functionality is actually free. The paid tier gets you more access to Intruder and a few other things that are not necessarily related to proxy.
Great. Basically, we could even like do SSL stripping and several other things. In this case, what we did is we just used basically it just re-terminated SSL, and then we would add Burp Suite's CRT to our trusted keys. Our phone would complain saying your network may be monitored, but if you added a key, everything would work.
So the first thing we did was we generated a proxy saying that our computer is a certificate authority, and then put that onto our phone, which you can do from the proxy tab and generate a CA certificate.
If you use like Charles Proxy for this, they just have a general CRT that you can use that basically every instance uses. Which also means that if you're done with this, you probably want to take that off of your phone, just because if someone else is running a Charles Proxy, then they're able to intercept what you're doing. So if you use something like herb spoofing, and you go through a lot of this sites, and you trust that certificate, they can see what you're doing.
Then from there, we proxied everything from my phone through Burp Suite and captured all the packets. So I'll go ahead and open up Grindr and start capturing stuff. So the first bunch of them are all of the ads that is loading onto your screen. Then we get down to services and session, which is it authenticating with itself to get session IDs and the like. So we can start mapping out the API that it's using. So we see that it calls to services, session, rules, blocks, nearby profiles.
Okay, text is kind of small. All it does is it sends a request with just a JSON body, and so we can see what type of things they're sending. The other thing is that eventually we'll send something. I think the key is application session.
All right, so in this session, you'll send an authentication token, and then it'll respond with an XMPP token.
But something that we didn't notice at first was also in the headers, they respond with the session ID. So they respond with both a body with the XMPP token and then a session ID in the actual header, and that the session ID is something that will be used later. We kind of skipped over this a bit, and we thought, oh, they put the session set body, and later we actually even look at the application, like to compile the application itself, found, oh, we just skipped over it. We're probably should look harder. I will get into that shortly, though.
You can also see that we're making a request to nearby profiles. So what this request has is, if you only want to see online people, the number, like the page through either 0 through 49 users or 50 through 100 or whatever.
And then we'll also notice that we have the session ID that we just got, and that's just used to authenticate as our current user. You need to use the session. If you don't use the session ID, it will not return distances, and that's a recent security measure they implemented. However, they'll show it's still not really enough.
It's also got our latitude and longitude coordinates. And then from there, we got a giant response, which is JSON formatted information. So I can put that into like a JSON format, or you want to see it.
It's just basically every user and some information about them.
So from here, we can see that we have profile IDs, status, or if they're online or offline, different information that they upload, like about mean session, their age, their distance, stuff like that.
And then the distance is the really fun one that we're going to use later.
So it seems that they're giving us their distance in the form of a double, which can be fairly accurate when it's come down to being really close to people. So from there, we spoof this multiple times to get multiple distances to the same user, and then use trilateration, where you have 3 points and 3 distances to generate a third point, which is their actual location. So there's some degree of error.
A few things when going through this in implementation. They do a few other things that we found. For example, you can keep on requesting users and go to the next page. We'll limit you to 300 users, but that means that you can just make another request instead. And they, and we'll go again over this a bit more later, but they don't do any sort of rate limiting. So you can make as many requests as you want at any distance you want, and you'll get a response.
Okay. I think that's what we got from Berkeley. And then from there, we had to figure out where we were getting the session ID, because we didn't initially see it in the response headers. So what we did is we actually decompiled the app. So I downloaded the APK from the Google Store and extracted it so that we could see the most of the files and whatnot. You'll notice we have a classes.dex. It's here, so I did that.
Okay, so this is just something, APK is really just a zip file.
It's essentially a zip file of like compiled Dalvik code, I believe.
Yeah, compiled Dalvik code resources. So you can literally just rename APK to zip, and you'll have access to this. You still need to put the text file through something to get it into more useful form. There's tools like DexJar, which Zach.
So we use a program called Dex2Jar to take the Dex file here and extract it to a jar file, which is a lot of fun. So I'll just go ahead and do that again for you guys. No, I don't know if anyone can read that. It's small.
It's still a compiled jar, but there's many tools out there to decompile Java code. Even if it is somewhat obfuscated, we can still get a lot of information from it.
Okay. From there, we can use a program called JD GUI, which will take a jar file and decompile it into readable Java source code. And then search for different parameters and stuff that we were looking for. So one thing I actually just pulled up beforehand was all of their REST API endpoints. So you can see the strings for every request that they could possibly make to their own server from their stuff. So they have services, rules, station profile, all that stuff. One thing that we did use was we were trying to get our session token. So we basically just looked at the session one and saw that it was redeemed the header. So there's that. I think that basically shows how we got all of our info for that.
There's a few things that developed since the competition went on. Like, for example, somewhat later in the competition, after I made a lot of requests, I noticed all of a sudden, hey, all of a sudden I'm getting 400 errors. And then I thought, okay, maybe their security is decent, and I just got banned because I made thousands of requests. It turns out that's not true. So I opened my phone, and it just, all of a sudden, it had access to everything again. Turns out what happens is they'll eventually, and I'm not sure whether the terms do this, they recycle a session, and all you need to do is that initial part where you got the session, where you provided your phone's ID. You just need to do it again, and it'll give you a completely new session. So as soon as they lock you out, you can just get a new session and continue working. So it's effectively useless.
I think that's it for our presentation. But in the lab jam or whatever afterwards, I suppose I could walk people through Dex2Jar and JD GUI. Do you have any questions?
Have you walked up to anybody you found using this, said, be careful, don't use that app anymore?
Not walked up to, but there's several people who I knew using it, who I told, who seems a combination of scared and appreciative, which is probably a valid response.
We've talked to like some people on Facebook after we like posted screenshots of this, and it's like, can you actually do this? And they're like, yes, we can.
A few things. There are several things that they should be doing to prevent this from happening. The first is over the 36-hour hackathon, we made literally millions of requests, and at no point did they say, hey, I'm getting a lot of requests from this. This seems suspicious. Especially since the application itself normally only updates every 15 minutes, but we weren't doing things in parallel, but every 600 milliseconds, which was about how long it took to get the response, we were making a new request. So that's a big red flag, and that's one of the first things they should fix. Another thing, however, is they give you very precise location, and something that can happen to prevent this is location buzzing. But you need to be careful with this. Something they could do is say buzz to the nearest, I don't know, meters or something, but then you can just say that's somewhat imprecise, and if you're making many measurements, you can still actually get a fairly precise location. Similarly, if you just round it off to say the nearest mile, what you can do is you can find at what point the mile changes, and at that point you have a precise location. So basically the only thing that they can do in that case is calculate the distance from a rounded point and then round that distance as well. If that happens, you don't have the precise location from the user standpoint, but you don't give away your user's location, which is, in this case, I believe, much more important, especially given the target of the application and how in many areas it can be potentially dangerous to be found.
So a lot of that really boils down to a flaw of design, more or less, where them giving you the information with how far certain people from you, there's really no way to stop you from using that to triangulate people.
Yeah, to an extent, they can make it less precise, and that helps, but even then they weren't doing a lot of basic security measures, like again, rate limiting. And so it's really clear in this case, they don't really have concern for security, because in that case, even in the case where they saw precise distances, if you couldn't make that many requests, that would dramatically negate the impact of this. But we can make sequential requests and locate 18,000 people in 15 minutes, so it's not really what's being done. It's dramatically irresponsible.
So we could walk through doing Tinder later or something.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, we checked out Tinder at the hackathon as well, and Tinder is slightly different, but you can probably do the same methods.
To an extent. They round just, I don't think they do rate limiting either, but the distance that they give you are rounded, and they might be rounding in both directions, in which case the impact would be severely mitigated, but you could locate someone to, say, about a mile, which could be deemed acceptable. Being located within a block and seeing where you move every 15 minutes, however, probably not as much. Any more questions?
So, while I get set up, who's heard of shell shock? CVE 6271. Who thinks it's like the greatest thing ever? Oh, 7167 is that. Yeah, because apparently they've also like failed to fix it 3 times now.
Yeah.
I actually had to unsubscribe from a mailing list because I got like 70 or 80 emails in 3 hours. It's this war going back and forth about cutting functionality from Bash because it's terrible. It's going to take a few minutes for me to get my laptop actually going here, but...
I've got a quick question then. How many of you guys use Linux or Unix fairly often? Like for a job, just because you like it? Now, lower your hands if you use Bash as your primary shell.
Lower it.
I use not Bash.
And yeah, so those of you who kept your hands up, what do you use for your primary shell?
Fish.
ZSH? Fish. I use ZSH as well. And ZSH is awesome. It's the coolest thing in the world. So, there's that. Have any of you guys used C shell? TCSH? No? You have? For the university?
For a class.
For a class. See, the university uses TCSH for everything. All their admins use that, and just because it's ancient, like everything else they do here.
Alright. So I think I'm up. Yeah. So just in case you're interested in playing along, there's a link on the IASG. Yep. Oh, let me make sure. Yeah. Okay. We'll be good. Just readably large. That looks beautiful. So if you're interested in playing along, demo2.drehas.me is playground sandbox. So if you want to go trash something with shell shock, you can go ahead and do that on demo 2. It's pretty easy. It's actually ridiculously easy. So in case you're not, let's see, raise your hand if you don't know how shell shock works. All right. So what you can do is shells track and sort of pass around what's called the environment, and that keeps track of a bunch of sort of useful, almost metadata, things like what size, what resolution in terms of characters your terminal is, what color support your terminal has, the all-important path variable. Raise your hand if you ever messed with your path variable. So your search path, never trust someone else's path variable. It can lie to you. And so this environment is just passed along, more or less trusted by everything as it goes. And then whenever a new shell starts up like bash, the first thing it has to do is it has to parse its environment. And the environment gets passed in as just a giant glob of text with some things looking like this. Just a bunch of variables, equal signs, and then values all crammed together into a text file. There was a little known feature that basically everyone discovered last Wednesday, that in addition to passing lame variables through, you can pass functions through as well, which will get you something looking a bit like, I'm just going to drag a terminal over, a bit like this. Here's an empty function. So this is an empty function. It's oh boy, well, okay. It's literally nothing, but if we print the environment, you see the x right there. So that's more or less a lame variable. That's a function. Now, that's sort of useful. No one's really used it since the 90s. And then someone discovered that if you put some junk here, that's straight up junk. That is a syntax error. We all love syntax errors, don't we? What's the same thing to do if you're an interpreter when you see a syntax error? You error out, you return, you ignore it, you do something. Well, bash, in this situation, will execute the syntax error instead of ignoring it or doing anything not completely insane, which really ruined a lot of people's days, because there's a lot of ways to get the environment passed into something, and then it will parse it, and even if you, being a responsible developer, completely ignore the environment because it's probably lying to you, you still get burned because it executes stuff randomly just by parsing the environment. So, hop on a vulnerable machine here. I have patched it on everything. And if any of you have anything running Linux, you should patch this too, because it's terrible. So if we could go ahead and do the export to export this empty function again with some junk, and then we invoke bash, it's executing the junk that shouldn't even exist. So it took about 8 hours for people to begin scanning the entire internet with this attack fully automated to try to take over machines. The biggest vector here, the two that worry people, is the first one being CGI, which if any of you are looking at the Playground website, is anyone poking around with that? Get some laptops? Well, hopefully we can play around with that some in the hackerspace. There's a lot of CGI, and CGI is old school dynamic content. It literally runs any program that you tell it to, and then returns that crap, whatever it puts out, back to the browser. That is the output of it. This runs almost all of Iowa State University, as well as pretty much all of the federal and state governments, because they haven't updated anything since the 80s or 90s. It's not particularly terrible or particularly vulnerable, it's just really, really ghetto. Because it's just we run a binary and we return whatever it spits out. Which means that if you feed it in the, by the way, the environment gets fed into that, and the bunch of the HTTP headers and whatnot all get fed in to create the environment that that ends up using. So, this is just a, wrong mouse button, example of a very simple bash CGI script. It runs the time command and then returns that. It runs the time by absolute pass, so this would be considered safe. We're not trusting the environment in any way. We're invoking it by the full path, and we're just embedding it in what we return. The problem is it still parses the environment. And due to the shell shock bug, that will trigger it, that landmine of it just executing the garbage. So, someone compiled a wonderful cheat sheet of ways to ruin stuff with shell shock. And plenty of them are just through using curl and Phoenix custom headers. I'm gonna have to pull this over here. I can't read over my shoulder. And find it. To specify. So basically, the idea is that you specify. Specify a custom header in curl. So I'll pick and then bring it over. Alright, so what we're going to run is just curl, which if you've ever used curl before, it's just a command line downloader that makes a connection, but various command line arguments can specify a header by default, and it got a 500. Let's figure out what happened there. We had a demo fail probably. So okay, well, it actually was working. I was getting a legitimate 500 error. I'll pull it up here so you can see. It was receiving a bad header of owned. So the server is telling us it's been owned, which is a wonderful sign. So how we can of course play with this is rather than doing simple echo owned, how about some wget and execute? So we'll call curl download a reverse shell, drop it in /temp/ reverse shell.py, and then we will start that up, and of course this, get our netcat listener going, and this should download wonderfully convenient that I have stashed away in case I need it reverse shell in Python, and then execute it, fire a connection back to that one, which that didn't work. And this is probably a pain to debug. I'll work on this and consider this to be a demo fail, but in the hackerspace, I'll definitely keep playing with this and hopefully get this one to work. As well as if anyone has a Kali Linux VM, there is already a Metasploit module out there for this that will generate all this payload automatically and then make it happen. And like I said, it took about 8 hours after the vulnerability went public until people from China and Russia and Syria had already scanned the entire internet and run this automatically on everything. So this is a really bad bug. And it'll be a fun one to play with for a while because it's so easy to just drop a shell on a box. Once I can figure out what went wrong with this one. But yeah, so if you want, we can head on up to Hackerspace if anyone else has any questions. Anyone have any questions about shell shock? Yeah?
Well, it's probably like the most damaging thing somebody's done with this. Like, are there any big cases yet?
Presumably, it was never used in the wild until it was discovered. It's been around for 25 years. So someone, the NSA, probably has known about it for like 20 years and been using it with, and keeping it very under wraps because it's a very good bug. But as far as what's been damaging, what's been done, no one really knows yet. There isn't anything high profile like iCloud. As far as what could be done, anything with CGI scripts that call bash, which is not just CGI script written in bash. There's a Python script up there to sort of prove that it's not just bash, it's anything that calls bash eventually, anything that uses a shell. There's even a C program up there on the example that will fire it off too. And you can drop a shell very trivially because you can download and execute anything. And if you're running your web server as root, that's really bad. Other than that, you are running it as the CGI user, which can presumably modify the website. So you do now have a shell on the website with privileges to modify everything. That's not good. And it's basically lets you completely take over the server very trivially.
So, seeing that you've set up your own kind of server to run this against yourself, essentially, how do the logs for the web server and such reflect this attack?
All of the access logs would see sketchy things in the headers, assuming it logs headers. I'm actually not familiar with the Apache logs. For the record, Nginx makes it actually rather tricky for this one to work because Nginx doesn't pass through the entire environment to CGI scripts without you manually doing it, which is cool and a win for Nginx. But I believe the Apache logs do store all of the headers. And I believe the typical curl proof of concept that goes through is just setting the user agent, which is definitely logged. So if you see people's user agents looking like wget and execute, it probably means they're trying to wreck your stuff.
Just kind of a little bit of a disclaimer with that being said, Iowa State, although it does use a lot of CGI websites, and there are a lot of vulnerable sites for Iowa State with
They
this.
don't use bash.
They don't use bash, but also they do have intrusion detection systems. They will be looking for requests that include some of these things, and especially being on the Iowa State network, a lot of your activity is logged, and the IPs you do pretty much anything from is logged. So be careful what you play with. I would hate to see any of you guys get expelled because you're playing with something so super awesome. So just be careful.
So yeah, up in the hackerspace, you'll be walking through some of those tools that you used, like it's just at 6 o'clock. And I'll be going through the shell shock if anyone else is interested in seeing how that works and playing with it, and hopefully I can successfully drop a shell. Other than that, yeah. Do we have announcements for next week?